Loading screens in games are weird. They exist in almost every game in one way or another, and usually with flashy big budget games, they're more noticeable because it takes so much longer to load up all those shiny polygons, meaning the fanciest games tend to have the most downtime, where you're just staring at a screen doing nothing. A lot of the time, loading screens just feel like you're having the fun sapped out of your experience. Like I want to be killing shit, not staring at a screen. Even when they're great, they're still essentially a waiting room. There are a variety of different types of loading screens which try to keep you entertained while the game prepares itself, from crappy tips to hilarious tips, lore-based loading screens, beautiful elegant animations, and even minigames. Personally, I quite enjoy loading screens where you get to read about the lore of a game. Bloodborne and Dark Souls immediately come to mind. I think knowing the background of a world helps me get more immersed in it, and it's a great use of time where I can't be killing monsters. I think so many more games could benefit from this style, but on the whole, loading screens are just so boring. Because of this, a lot of games have opted for what I'd call seamless loading screens, which have you slowly opening a door or crawling through a narrow gap. I suppose they're more immersive and don't break the flow as much as a different screen, but my god, they are still so boring. Why do they all still give you control when your character is moving at a snail's pace, or you're just mashing one button? Personally, I'd prefer it just doing the action for me. The issue that I haven't seen a seamless loading screen solve is when you die and the game resets. Without a good in-universe explanation for deaths, there's no way to show that without fading to black in some way. So, here we get to the crux of what I want to talk about today. I've been playing Celeste recently, and it's fair to say that I've been dying a little bit, but I've kept at it. Other than Celeste being a fucking amazing game, I noticed one huge thing about what happens when I die, and that is almost nothing. Within half a second I'm back at the start of the area ready to try again. It's obvious to see the amount of failure I've been experiencing has been expected and baked into the design of the game. The platforming in Celeste is so precise, any mistake gets you killed, but even though I scream aloud at my near misses, because each section is so tight and the time to try again so short, I never feel disheartened. I never dwell on my deaths, I just realize the mistake I'm making and try to correct it. To put it bluntly, even with its brutal difficulty, the pacing of each area is absolutely perfect. The music doesn't stop and start again when you die, the screen doesn't fade to black and quote George Orwell. You just get a 1-second screen wipe and keep trying. Because it feels like the game expects me to die within the gameplay, I don't feel at all punished for dying. I feel like I'm being encouraged further upwards and it fills me with determination. Almost all the roguelikes I play have this exact same feature. The runs are a lot longer, so I didn't really notice it until now, but every one of them has a one-button restart feature that lets you try again almost instantly, and I've noticed that among a lot of indie titles. As I said earlier, it's probably because they don't take so long to load to begin with, but I never realized how big a deal this was until I played Celeste. For contrast, let's look at some slightly worse examples. Mario Maker 2. Some of the levels people make are just insane, and you will die over and over, except there's a super long death animation and a fade to black every single time, and the music for each level starts again from the start every time.
That's never going to get old for me.
This level of annoyance just immediately puts you off, and every death feels excruciating. Another infamous example is Bloodborne when it first released. This is my favourite game of all time, so you know I'm gonna be nice to it, but fucking hell. The deaths are built into the story and the mechanics of the game so beautifully, yet when it first came out the death loading screen was just a fucking logo, and it took 40 seconds to load, in a game where new players are expected to die all the time. This isn't even a still image, it's a video of the loading screen from Bloodborne. I haven't edited this in any way, this is just how long it took. They quickly patched it down to about 10 seconds and added item descriptions, but imagine getting that game on day one and having to wait over half a minute after every death to go all the way back to the start of the level. I can understand punishing death from a gameplay perspective, but it shouldn't be as horrific as half a minute of pure boredom. That's just too real. This is a complaint I know can't really be solved because of the nature of the game, but Battle Royale games suffer this exact same issue. When you die in a game like Warzone, you have to exit out of the game and restart matchmaking every single time. Matchmaking takes like 20 seconds, and then you have a loading screen for another 10, then a pre-game lobby for around a minute, which admittedly is better than a blank screen, then another loading screen, then a cutscene. Like, I understand the limitations on multiplayer games, but taking like 2 to 4 minutes to go from one game to the next really puts the boot in when it comes to dying. Thankfully, they added a rematch button which saves you from going back out to the lobby every time, but it's made me realise why I have so little patience when I die. Death doesn't just represent failure, it represents sitting around doing nothing for 5 minutes. The loading screen revelation I've had has sparked memories of so many times during gaming where I've got super frustrated with the hard difficulty and either lowered it or given up entirely. I love challenging games, but I prefer them to test my skills rather than my patience. I even use assist mode on Super Mario Odyssey because it takes you back in a bubble, rather than giving you a long ass death screen when you fall. It's not that I'm sick of trying, it's that I'm sick of waiting around. I know a lot of what I've said applies to checkpoints too, and I know in most games the time you spend in a loading screen is insignificant compared to the time it takes to get back to where you died. But when you die 752 times in an hour and 7 minutes, you really realise what a difference a couple of seconds per death makes. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that loading screens are so vital when it comes to the pacing of a game, especially a difficult game. When you're dying over and over, it's so easy to lose interest when you have to wait 30 seconds just to be able to try again. I always thought graphics didn't matter as long as a game had style, but I've learned that more lightweight games can be so much more fun than super flashy games, because you spend much less time just waiting around. With the ever increasing capabilities of gaming hardware, loading screens are getting shorter and shorter, and although we may lose some beautiful works of art, I hope it's for the better in the end. Thank you to Matt Thorson and everyone at Matt Makes Games for showing me what death really means. Thank you to Madeline for climbing that mountain, and thank you for watching. Cheers.